How to draw. What's the best way to master a circle in perspective? Well, a circle in perspective is an oval. It's always an oval. It's never gonna be bloated on one side. It's an oval. And it's gonna fit in a square. So if you have a square in perspective, let's say we're just doing 1 point perspective and it's going to a focal point up there. The circle is going to touch all 4 sides at 1 point. And the angle of the oval is going to be perpendicular to the plane of that one plane. So this plane is pretty much straight up and down. That's the perpendicular angle to the plane. And I have to find the oval that touches all 4 sides. And that's the oval. It's not gonna like be smaller on the top than it is at the bottom. It's literally just an oval like that. If I want to tilt it, let's say my plane is like this, and now I have 2 or 3 point perspective. So that's the plane that the circle sits on. Well, what's the perpendicular angle? It's this way. So my oval is gonna be up and down, and it's gonna be squished like that. So the oval is something like this. This is the long axis of the oval, and it's squished this way. And this is a very common thing I see artists do when they're drawing like wheels on a car or something. They don't consider the angle that is perpendicular to that plane. So for example, if you're drawing a car, and the car, let's just draw a really basic car. We got blah, blah, blah. There's the plane of the car going this way. This is a very, very basic car, guys. This is like a Lego car. And we got the front of the car, right? There's the perspective of my car. And now I have to draw a wheel on here. What I see all the time is people will just draw a vertical oval going straight up and down, but that's wrong. You have to consider the angle that is perpendicular to this plane here that the wheel sits on. Unless it's the front wheel and it's turning, well then it's not this plane, now it's a plane that's actually turning a little bit, and then you gotta consider that new angle. But the back wheels are gonna be perpendicular to this plane. So you could look at this angle, kind of like the axle, right? The axle that connects the 2 wheels, that's an angle that's perpendicular. And then you go perpendicular to that, and that gives you the angle of the wheel. Let's say I want the center of the wheel to be here. The axle connecting the 2 wheels is at this angle, parallel to these. That means my oval is not gonna be vertical, it's gonna be perpendicular to this axle. And then how much do I distort it? Well, if I wanna measure it, then it gets a little more complicated because I have to figure out the perfect square in perspective. That's a different lesson. For now, I'm just gonna eyeball it, but the important point I'm trying to make here is that it's going to be at an angle. The long axis of that wheel is not vertical. So just a quick tip. So for the stuff I draw, this is enough. If you draw some more architectural stuff, you're gonna have to get a little bit deeper, but there's a start for you. How do you figure out anatomy? Oh God, a decade of just studying every part of the body over and over and over again. And of course, take my class. Ooh. If we're drawing figures from reference, what's the use of learning anatomy? Oh. Well, sir, it is very difficult to interpret what you're seeing. I bet if you don't know any anatomy, you could look at a figure and you have no idea what's going on. All you see are bumps. And it's gonna be very difficult for you to draw those bumps accurately or to design those bumps to look better or more how you want them to look like. Drawing from reference doesn't mean that you're replicating your reference perfectly. And that's kind of boring. I think that you should strive to improve on the photo in whatever way you want to improve it. You might push the gesture a little bit. You might simplify the structure. You might push the shapes to be more dynamic or interesting. Like you look at somebody like Max Grecki or Loish. Their stuff looks three-dimensional but kind of cartoony because they've stylized the way they shade. Or you look at someone like Nikolai Feshin, who is a master at representational art, but his shading is not photorealistic. He stylizes it a lot, and it looks more interesting. He's being expressive as an artist. Personally, I think that's more exciting. That's my opinion, though. If you would like to just copy a photograph exactly how it is, then you can do so. And if you're really good, you're really good at copying the photo, then yeah, maybe you don't need to study anatomy. But if you want to go any further than that, any kind of modifications, well, now you need to know what you're looking at. How to become a good artist. Why does it take so long to get good at perspective? Oh, probably because it's math and it's something that machines are better at than humans. Most of the time, right? Unless your brain is made for that kind of thing. But most artists, no, not so much. You're probably better at being creative and exploring ideas and, not math. And maybe you're approaching perspective as math, right? Are you practicing perspective by plotting points all the time and trying to get everything perfect? Well, that's fine. You do need to learn why perspective works a certain way, and you gotta practice and kind of ingrain that in your head. But you gotta learn some intuitive perspective as well. What I mean by intuitive perspective is drawing things that look like they're in perspective, but they're not perfect. You just draw it close enough. If you look at Kim Jong-il's stuff, he doesn't plot anything. Like, he's imagining in his head. Sometimes he'll probably break perspective rules just to make it look better. I don't know. The guy's a genius, so he doesn't follow rules. He just draws what looks good. And that's intuitive perspective, is like learning to draw it so it just gives the impression of three-dimensional form, not looking like a 3D rendering that came out of Maya or Blender or whatever. It could be bloated and things could be like tapering a little bit if that's what you're going for. Now, if what you're doing is doing like architectural renderings, well, that's different. I don't really have much advice for you other than, use software. Imagine some forms and to draw them, and do they look good? Show somebody that is good at perspective and say what jumps out as you as looking wrong in the picture I did. And they'll tell you, and then you try to improve on that. I don't know what your specific issue is, but that's kind of some general advice.
In my Drawing Basics course, I'll teach you how to draw anything from reference or from imagination. We'll learn intuitive perspective, so we can visualize characters with basic 3D forms. We'll develop habits for clean, confident lines, and how to shade using values and edges. Anyone can learn how to draw. You just need to learn how to speak the visual language. And that's over at proko.com/drawing.
Any drawing references websites to recommend? Honestly, I just use my own or the stuff that's on Proko.com. It's because it's there. And we actually have a lot more now than we did before when it was just the stuff that I photographed and put up as pose packs. We have several other pose photographers publishing their stuff on Proko.com. So go check it out. If you go to Proko.com and then click on tools, if you scroll through, you'll see there's a lot more model packs on there now. So yeah, sorry to just promote my own stuff, but yeah, it's there. And I honestly I don't go to any other place because I have enough there on my own platform. So, and life drawing, of course. You got to do some life drawing. Tips on understanding the structure of the reference. So you're saying understanding the structure. So this takes me to a few things. Okay, 1, structure has 3 levels to it. You got primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. Your primary forms are the biggest, simplest forms. This is like the mannequin of the body. To understand that, you need to be able to just observe and understand what something is in 3D. You could look at an arm and you don't need to know what the anatomy of the arm is. You just need to understand that, oh, it's this long thing and it's pointing that way and it could be like a cylinder. That's it. And you can simplify it to the primary forms. Once you start getting into the secondary and tertiary forms, they're getting more detailed. Secondary forms are like the bicep, the deltoid, the trapezius. These are the secondary forms. The tertiary forms are all the little things on top of that. Creases, veins, nails, wrinkles on the joints, skin folds like on the hands. When you got expressive hands, you'll get skin. It's like drapery. It's like a shirt. Your skin will go from the pinch points. Those could be tertiary or secondary. It really just depends on how big they are and how you interpret it. But for those tertiary and secondary forms, that's when understanding the thing you're drawing becomes important. It's not enough to be able to look at something and just interpret how to simplify that 3D thing. Now you have to understand what that thing is. So if you're drawing a person, you need to know anatomy. If you're drawing a wave, you need to understand the anatomy of a wave. If you're going to simplify a muscle or a body part into a secondary form, you are interpreting it. You're not just copying it. You are simplifying it to a geometric shape. Understanding the thing that you're drawing makes it so much easier to simplify the pieces into shapes that look good. It didn't become more clear until I went drawing at the zoo with Aaron Blaze. I know how to draw anatomy of a human. I know how to make things look 3D. I know how to make shapes look good. But when I got out there and I was trying to draw animals that were moving, not understanding their anatomy completely crippled me. And because Aaron had all that experience drawing all these different animals, and he knew what all the different anatomical forms were on that animal, most of the information that he would draw, it was from his head. He would just kind of glimpse at the animal, get enough information for him to be able to now start drawing that. And it looks like he's drawing that actual thing, but it's really, he's drawing his knowledge about that animal. If I were to simplify that animal into very basic shapes, like primary forms, that would have been very easy for me. Like, sure, oh, there's a box, you know? But beyond that, secondary, tertiary, oof, no way. I need to understand the anatomy of the animal to do that. Why draw anything? Why say anything, right? Why do anything? I don't know. Because you want to? You like it? It makes you feel good? Provides value to other people? Why else? Because you got something to say? And someone's listening? I got nothing else, man. Perspective. Yes. Human poses. True. Okay. DEEZ nuts. Oh God.